Randy, it's such an honor to present you this evening. I want to thank you for being so kind and accepting my invitation to speak right away. uh, Randy was in a coma and experienced three near-death experiences. He was privileged with the ability to see several deceased relatives. Um, Randy was honored when an unknown deceased veteran chose him to deliver a message to his granddaughter. Randy was also able to validate this experience by locating the granddaughter and passing her grandfather's message to her. So I really enjoy the way you tell your story, Randy. So, having said that, please begin and know that at the end of your presentation, people will ask questions, okay?
That's fine. Thank you. No, thank you so much for having me this evening. It really is an honor to be able to come in front of your group and to share my experiences. It, it's only been a short time, about a year and a half, and I've really taken this period and done a lot of research and to validate not only one story, but to be sure that I knew what I was talking about and be sure that I actually experienced what I did and where my consciousness was actually traveled to. Hopefully you've read the section that y'all put out on me. That's very kind and very nice, well written. I appreciate that. But yeah, I did come down with COVID fairly early. It was in March of 2020. And I live in Northwest Florida, and I was able to look this up. And the first case of COVID in our area actually came in probably about 10, maybe 15 days before I actually got sick. So I got it very early on in our area. It's probably one of the first, I guess, if that is some type of a honor, to be the first to receive it. But I went to my family doctor because I was feeling sick, and he examined me and told me that I had the flu and not to worry about it and come back if I didn't feel better. And I asked him at that time, I said, it just doesn't feel like the flu. Could I get tested for this COVID? And if you remember at that time, the health department came down with I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 different questions, that they wanted to ask, have you traveled and have you been in contact and all that kind of stuff. And all of my answers, of course, were no. And he said, well, there's no need to to have you tested. I'm sure you have the flu. Go home and rest. And that was on a Monday that occurred. And by Wednesday, I was absolutely so sick again. And that would have been March the 25th. That I decided to go back and see the doctor again. And this time I got in to see a physician assistant, and he examined me, as did the other doctor, assured me that I just had the flu. I asked him if I could get tested as well. And of course, his same response was what the doctor had told me, that there was no need to test me and I had the flu, go home and rest, come back in a week if I didn't feel better. Well, if I would have followed those instructions, I wouldn't be sitting here today, this evening, talking to you, because I definitely would have been dead. On Wednesday, the 28th of March, my one daughter came by to check on me, and she called. I have my baby, I call her, but she's 30 years old, but she's the nurse in the family. And my oldest daughter called her and said, Dad doesn't look good. He's pretty gray. And she said, well, get into the emergency room right away. So she took me down, and it didn't take them long to admit me in critical condition for bilateral pneumonia. If you're familiar with pulse oxygen rates, your normal pulse oxygen rate is about 95 to 100, and when I was admitted, mine was at 81. So I had very very little oxygen in my system, and they put me on oxygen, admitted me to the ward, and only about 2 days later, I went into pretty much a respiratory distress. and they did an emergency intubation and on me. And at that time, they put me into a medically induced coma. And on the 30th of March, I was so bad, and I had maxed out the ventilator, that they airlifted me over to a larger hospital in Pensacola, where they put me on an ECMO machine, which is essentially a heart-lung bypass machine. They put a tube in through your jugular vein down into your heart, and it removes the blood from your body, cleans it, reoxygenates it, and puts it back into your body, gives your lungs and heart a chance to rest. Because my lungs were completely full of COVID. They were absolutely, completely white with COVID. A day after that, my kidneys failed, and I went into kidney failure. They put me on dialysis. And it wasn't shortly after that that my liver started to throw off. I had high enzymes and started to throw off blood clots. And my heart, the left ventricle of my heart enlarged, and it wasn't pumping adequately. So it was right around this time that they called my family and told them that I had about a 3% chance of survival, and they should probably start, thinking about how they wanted to handle my demise. And that's annotated in my medical records, that they totally expected me to die. And Lisa, our nurse, went to school with a friend who at the University of Kentucky, whose father was the infectious disease doctor for the university. And she called him, and he recommended the kids try to get convalescent plasma for me. And long story short, they did that. They got me convalescent plasma, and the hospital administered that on Good Friday of 2020. And by Easter morning, they were able to cap the ECMO machine. That means they actually were able to turn it off. My lungs had healed that quickly and disposed of the COVID, that they were able to turn it off within 48 hours. And 2 days after that, my kidneys started to completely function. They removed me off dialysis. And from there, they started to wean me off the ventilator. And so I went into the hospital on March the 23rd. And I was actually released from the hospital on May the 8th. And I'm very fortunate to be here. During those early days when I was really critically sick, is when I believe that my near-death experiences occurred. Being in the coma, I was restrained. They gave me paralyzing drugs, so I couldn't resist or move or anything. And it was then that I clearly recall my consciousness waking up, and I was in a tunnel. I didn't know it was a tunnel at the time. When I initially described it to my daughter, I said I was in some type of an airplane, because it was that type of a fuselage shape, no seats or anything, but this fuselage shape. And I said, but the funny thing is, I said that tunnel wasn't moving, but I was. I said I wasn't going very fast, but I was moving through this tunnel. And I said every spaced out periodically as I moved through this tunnel, they had small little openings, very similar to what an aircraft has along the fuselage. And so outside, as I looked outside these, or glanced outside these little openings, I could see this bright, brilliant light outside of this tunnel. And it was so bright, you could feel the warmth. And by the way, I knew that I had died. I said to myself, well, okay, I'm dead, I died, but where am I? Where am I going? Where am I traveling to? And I wasn't really brought up a very religious person, so I didn't have a lot of references or a lot of experiences. So this was somewhat all strange to me. And that tunnel ended, and my consciousness came out inside of a absolutely beautiful hall. I was standing on a mezzanine in an absolutely beautiful hall. And you're going to hear me use the words magnificent and beautiful, because you can't describe it. I mean, it was such a glorious place. It was all outlined in gold with these big arches. on the sides of the walls that must have went into different areas of this hall. But there was big, beautiful chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. There was fountains that I remember, and the windows were all stained glass, beautiful stained glass windows. It's just a magnificent looking room, and it was all in gold inlaid and very bright. And there was hustling, bustling going on the floor. I could feel that, but I couldn't see it. I couldn't see anybody, but I felt the movement, and I saw some orbs flashing. But again, I didn't know where I was or what I was experiencing. And I was standing there, and I felt that there was someone else beside me. I felt their presence. Couldn't see anybody, but I just felt that I wasn't alone, that somebody was there with me. And this gentleman walked up to me, kind of dark hair and a beard. And he walked up to me. We spoke momentarily about how beautiful the room was. And I remember him making the comment that it was one of their more favorite rooms, one of the more popular rooms that people like to come into. And then he looked at me and he said, "You're not supposed to be here. You need to leave." And that kind of struck me like, okay, why aren't I good enough to be here? And he pointed over to some doors, and there were huge, magnificent oak-looking doors with beautiful carved inlays and all outlined in gold. The big oak doors were, the frame was all gold. It was absolutely a beautiful, stunning room. So I remember my consciousness, and remember, I don't have a feeling of a body or anything, and I just moved over toward the door and opened the door up, went down a few steps, and I was in this beautiful city, this just absolutely gorgeous city. And I remember walking down the streets. There weren't any cars or buses or anything like that, but orbs of light, and I saw a few outlines of orbs of light moving around, and the streets were almost an opaque white. They were just so beautiful, and the buildings were just as tall as almost as high as you could see. These beautiful buildings made out of glass, and they're absolutely gorgeous. And I remember walking through and looking at the parks, and the parks were just stunning. They were so well manicured and beautiful, luscious trees and flowers, and just absolutely beautiful, maintained. And as I got deeper into this city, something transitioned. Because I felt very at peace. I felt very peaceful, very accepted into the setting that I was in. But then I suddenly remembered, I'm lost. I don't know how to get back. How am I going to find my way back? And I started to get scared and concerned that I was lost and nobody was able to find me. And I remember being very, very tired and cold. And I sat down on the curb, and I was trying to get people's attention, because I felt other people around me, but I just couldn't see them. I don't think I was allowed to see them. And trying to get their attention to help. And I finally looked over my right shoulder. And as I looked over my right shoulder, I saw this beautiful staircase going up into the sky, just almost as far as you could see, this beautiful white staircase. And I was so tired, I could hardly move. And I remember saying, if I can make it over to that staircase, maybe if I start to climb up this staircase, somebody will find me. So I did that. I went over to the staircase, and I started to slowly work my way up the staircase. And suddenly I heard someone yell, "There he is. There's Randy. Get him." And it was like somebody grabbed me by the scuff of the shirt collar and just whisked me right off of that steps. And they whisked me right back into my little darkened, sedated world, if you would. I just went, the whole scene went black, and I was, back in my little sedated world. And you have to excuse my voice because it will get hoarse and a little bit dry as we go on, because my vocal cords were somewhat damaged because I was intubated for so long. So I apologize for that up front. So, and remember, I don't know any sequence of this. I don't know, when any of my dreams, and I had dreams and I had hallucinations, and I know those. I know the difference between those. My dreams seem to involve people that are still alive. They involved my family and some friends of ours, and so and places that I have been and visited. Those are definitely were my dreams. And then I had hallucinations as well, like the six dancing panda bears on the ceiling, dancing, to some awful music, and those were hallucinations. And I know that, and I could tell the difference. But then I had this other little group of experiences that I just couldn't put a handle on. I didn't know what happened or where I was, and that's what I've been dealing with and struggling with, is this other area. So I don't know the sequence of any of this, obviously, but I remember my consciousness awoke a second time, and these NDEs were so much more vivid and real than my dreams or even the hallucinations. And I remember I was back in that tunnel again, and I exited into that same city where I was previously, but in a different area of that city, because the buildings looked somewhat the same. They were very tall and beautiful and outlined in gold. And I started to walk through again, and again realized that I was lost, and I couldn't find my way back. I wasn't as scared this time because I knew where those steps were. And I said to myself, if I can get to those steps, maybe somebody will find me again. So I made my way back and around and made steps. Beautiful, again, just the same as before, just these white staircase going up. And I started slowly going up this staircase, hoping that somebody would find me. And there again, I heard that same voice. There he is. It's Randy. Get him. But this time I turned around and I looked before they whisked me off of that. And I saw a man in a white robe, and he had white hair and a white beard. And he was the one that whisked me off of those steps and saved me from being lost again. And again, from that point, I went back into my dark little, my dark little world that I experienced. So I, when the next time that my consciousness woke, I was in that tunnel for a very, very short period of time before I exited into a void. And it was somewhat dark. It was not pitch black, but it was dark. And I was standing there again, realizing that I must be dead. And I was so much at peace with that. And if you knew me before this experience, well, you may not know, because I've been married 48 years, and my wife never knew of this fear that I had until my NDEs. And I feared death. I mean, I was a criminal investigator for 35 years, 20 years with the military, and then I did consulting work. I was deputy director of a police academy. I was in my master's degree is in forensic science, and that's what I was. I was an old homicide detective and investigated hundreds of crime scenes, and I could even count the number of autopsies. And that's what I did. I dealt with death, and I investigated death, and I took victims' families and made them at peace, knowing how their loved one may have passed, or whatever the case may have been, or brought the subject to justice for doing something. And in my world revolved around physical evidence. I had to have evidence before that I knew that something did or did not exist. I mean, that was my world. And if I was investigating a crime, what evidence did I have? And I can tell you stories, where I really had to do a lot of work to get that evidence. And but being in forensic work, you're a scientist, so you do a lot of experimentations and things, and it was that hardcore evidence that I always earned for believing in the afterlife and believing in a God. And I wasn't really raised very spiritually, so that's why I didn't have any references to where I was or what I was experiencing. At least that's what I think. So I was somewhat of a lost soul, and maybe that's what they were, referencing to, that I got lost, and now that they found me, because that has changed now. I'm much more spiritual of a person, and I'm enjoying my one-on-one relationship with God, and but I hated fear. I feared my death to the point where I would actually get into panic attacks. I full-blown, out of control panic attacks. I would stomp my feet. I would yell, no, no, and would be totally out of control of myself. And it was only after I could really regain my consciousness and try to settle down that I would come out of these. But I was totally feared my own death. And my wife never knew that until, like I said, just recently. But when I was in that void, I wasn't alone. There was another spirit that came up to me, and I couldn't see him. I felt him. I knew he was there. I felt his energy. And then when I was standing there with him, there were other orbs of light kind of moving around us. Some had human form. Some of them were just little round orbs, kind of moving along. And telepathically, I call him my spiritual guide now, but my guide indicated that I needed to follow him. So I did that. We've started to walk through this dark area, and I'm sure most of you, well, not all of you, have been to the theater. And as you look at a very dark stage, suddenly there's a little light that comes on in the corner, and that light gets brighter and brighter, and suddenly there's an actor standing there, and you can see the actor on the stage. So as we started to walk through, this little light started to come on. And as we got closer, it got brighter and brighter until it flashed on, and there sat my deceased mother-in-law, very beautiful lady, and she was much younger. She died of Lou Gehrig's disease, and if you're familiar with that, it's devastating on the body. And she was much younger. Probably told my wife her mom was probably in about her 30s, and she was sitting at a bar. It wasn't like a bar that I call it a bar because of lack of a better description of it, but she was sitting there very upright and proper and very regally, and she had this beautiful white gown on, and her hair was all pulled up with this beautiful white ribbon tied around her hair. And she was sitting there just beautifully, and she glanced over at me, and I called out to her, but she didn't acknowledge me. She slowly just looked away, and I continued to try to call out to her. And from behind the bar, this young man comes out, and he runs by, very quickly runs by, and he has his hand out, and he's knocking all of the glassware off of the back of this bar area, I guess, or this shelf in the back. And I recognized him as my deceased brother-in-law. He died of a drug overdose many years ago, and he was in his mid-30s when he passed. And he was about a teenager then. He didn't stop. He didn't stop to acknowledge my presence or to say hello or even stop to talk to his mom. He just kind of ran right by us and disappeared into the darkness. And it was about that time my spirit guide indicated that we need to move on. And we started to go deeper into this dark void and off to the, let me talk about vision here real quick. It's funny because, here on Earth, we have this limited vision, we're limited peripherally of what we can see. And up there, it's almost like you have 360-degree vision. You know what's going on around you, and it's just amazing experience. And I could see way back, kind of to my left and way in the back, that light over my mother-in-law just slowly dimming off until she just kind of disappeared. And as we moved deeper into this, the void, off in the distance, again, I saw these three light orbs together. And as we got closer, they started to get larger, and they suddenly appeared. And I couldn't see them as well as I saw my mother-in-law. I saw her perfectly. It's just like looking at any of you right now, just absolutely perfectly. But I couldn't see these other three very clearly, but I knew, instantly I knew that it was my deceased father, my deceased mother, and my sister who's passed. And they were all standing together. And I was so excited to see them. I mean, the first thought was, oh my God, Mom, Dad, Gina. And I started yelling out to them, hey, it's me, I'm over here, you know. But they either couldn't hear me or they didn't want to acknowledge me, or maybe both, because I felt that there was something in front of me, some type of a barrier, some type of veil, maybe an invisible veil that separated us. And they wouldn't acknowledge my presence. My father, who I was the closest with, looked at me and then kind of turned his back very quickly. And my mother and sister stood for, probably, I don't know, again, time is no reference, but it seemed like a few more seconds. And they totally turned their back to me as well. And we weren't moving. My spirit guide and I had stopped. We weren't moving any further into this area. And they were some distance away. And I was yelling to them, Mom, Dad, I'm here. But they wouldn't, they just kept their backs turned, and slowly that light started to dim away, and they too just slowly disappeared. And I remember being disappointed that they did disappear and I couldn't see them anymore, because I was so excited. My father died back in 1969 of a heart attack. I was 16 years old, and he died while we were on vacation very suddenly. And I tried to resuscitate him. Back in the 60s, CPR was very new, and I didn't totally understand what I was doing, but I tried and was not successful in doing resuscitation on him. And that guilt laid with me all these years, these 50 years. That guilt has laid, and I think his death, I know his death affected me so greatly that it really set the tone for all of my career, becoming a criminal investigator, becoming a homicide detective, to getting my master's degree in forensic science, to becoming, having a specialty in blood spatter interpretation, and I think that's all relevant to how he has guided me through my life. And so we're standing there, and it was dark, and I saw this orb way kind of off to the right-hand side, almost behind me, and that orb, I don't know why he stood out. This particular light stood out, and he was moving very quickly toward me. And he came up, and he got almost right in front of me, and he stopped. And I could just see his face, just a round face of a young man, probably in his 20s, very thin face, dark hair. And he looks at me, and he says to me, tell Madison at the salon her grandfather is okay. Tell Madison at the salon her grandfather is okay. And I didn't know him. I had no clue who this person was. I've never, ever seen him before in my life. But I knew he was a veteran. I'm a veteran, and I just felt that he was a veteran. And he moved in front of me, and that face disappeared, and he went into a light orb of a human figure, and he went over and got onto a white porch, white railings, white deck, white steps, beautiful, brilliant white porch. And he sat there, and he started making red, white, and blue ribbons and American flags. And it wasn't shortly after that my spirit guide indicated to me that it was time for me to go. I had to leave. And I returned back into my little dark, sedated world, And so I don't know when of these happened. there's another one that I'm trying to figure out, and I can get to that if we have the time. And so they brought me around. They brought me out of the coma, and it was the first week in May where they finally allowed my daughter, Lisa, to come into the hospital room and be with me. Because, they understood that she was a nurse. She understood the risks of COVID. And they let her in. And she helped me tremendously during that time. And I wasn't alone anymore. And the last person I saw was my oldest daughter on March the 23rd when she dropped me off at the emergency room. So I hadn't seen any family until finally May the 4th when she finally was allowed to come in. And I didn't tell her right away about any of this, because as I said before, I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what happened. I didn't tell the doctors and nurses. I kind of held it within me. And we had a lot of time to talk. And I said, hey, can I tell you a couple of things that happened to me? And I told her my dreams. I told her my hallucinations, and I didn't label them. She did, and she said, well, Dad, you probably hallucinated that. And I told her, I said, Lisa, I had these others, and I told her as best as described as I could, what had happened to me. And she said, well, Dad, who's Madison? Who's this person? I said, Lisa, I don't know. Who approached me and gave me this message from Madison? And she says, do you know a Madison? I said, I don't know a Madison. And she said, and what's Salon? How are you ever going to find this person? I said, I don't know how I'm going to find them. I said, but I feel in my heart that I have a responsibility to find them, or at least try to find them, because a fellow veteran gave me this message, and, I felt a responsibility. So being in a hospital, being in a bed for 6 weeks, I had to learn to walk again and do a couple other things. And so they sent me home in a wheelchair and a walker. And we were home for, I don't know, maybe a week or so. And I was in my dresser in my bedroom trying to look for something. I don't even remember now what I was looking for. And I came across a business card for a barber shop in town. And I had been without a haircut for about 8 or 9 weeks. And I brought the card out to my daughter and I said, hey, could you call this place downtown and see, how they're treating COVID, and if they're cutting hair, and if they are, if they could please make me an appointment. And I went back into my bedroom, and she came in to me and she said, Dad, where did you get this card? And I said, well, it was in my dresser. And she goes, no, where did you get the card? And I said, well, I must have picked it up at that barber shop. And I don't, and she said, how long have you had it? And I said, Lisa, enough with the interrogation here, the 50 questions. What's your point? And she said, well, I think we found your Madison. And I said, what are you talking about? And she says, look at the card. And she handed it back to me. And written on the card was the name Madison Logan. And so I asked her, I said, will you call down there? And if Madison works there, you make an appointment. So she did. And she called and they said, yeah, they had a Madison there. And she made an appointment. And I don't use the word salon. It's either a barber shop, or if my wife she goes to the hairdresser. Salon is not in my list of vocabulary words, So we went down and they saw me, and because I was in my walker, and at that time all the customers had to wait outside, but the manager came out, and because I was, I'm an old guy with a walker, she invited me in to sit down. And I asked Lisa, I said, and there are, I think, six male, kind of combination of male, female barbers there. And I said, which one do you think is Madison? And she goes, I have no idea, but we're about to find out. And this young lady walks up and she goes, hi, I'm Madison. She said, come on back. So we went back to her chair and we were sitting there, and my daughter was telling her about what I had been through with COVID and almost dying. She didn't tell her about my experiences or anything, just that I was very sick and had a 3% chance of living and almost died. And I'm sitting there and I said, Madison, I said, can I ask you some personal questions? And she says, no, go right ahead. And I said, are both of your grandfathers living? And she says, no. She says, my one grandfather, she says, my favorite grandfather passed away a little less than a year ago. And I said, was he, I'm sorry to hear that. I said, did he live here in Florida? And she goes, no, he lived in Iowa his whole life. She says he lived up in Iowa, and that's where he was from. And I said, oh, and I said, was he a veteran? And she said, yeah. She said he was a veteran. She said, I remember him talking about being in the Army, and she goes, I think he was in Vietnam because he used to make references about Vietnam. So, I had enough that I felt pretty good that I had the right person. And I said, Madison, I said, I think your grandfather approached me and he's got a message for you. And of course, she's looking at me like I'm nuts, And I said, Madison, this is exactly what he told me. He said, tell Madison at the salon that her grandfather's okay. He's okay, Madison. He wants you to know that. And she's crying. I'm crying. My daughter's crying. Everybody else in the bar is looking at us like we're crazy, And I told Madison, I said, nobody's going to want to come over here to get their hair cut by you because you make people cry. And we laughed about it, and so I went on. I didn't have my full evidence yet. I still had questions. So I said, Madison, I said, your grandfather passed me and he went onto a white porch. Is that somehow significant to your, to you? She said, well, that would have been his house in Iowa. She said, it had a white porch to it. And he said he loved sitting on that porch. And he would go out and just, once he retired, he would sit and watch the people go by and, just love life sitting on this porch. And I said, Madison, and he started to make red, white, and blue ribbons and American flags. I said, does that fit in somehow? And Tina, I'm telling you, she took a step back and her eyes just got so big and round and tears flowing. And she said, every Veterans Day, her family would get together to support him and would go down to the American Legion where he belonged. And they made red, white, and blue ribbons and flags of the veterans' graves. And once she said that, I had my evidence. I mean, I just knew. I knew where I was. I knew that was real. I knew that, I didn't know him. I didn't know Madison. We're good friends now, obviously. And I've talked to her grandmother. Her grandmother is just a beautiful lady up in Iowa. And she shared a picture. I don't know if you can see it. I want to get this. I don't know. I'll try to hold it up. That's John. Oops, that's John. And she sent me that picture. Excuse me. She sent me that picture. And when I saw it, I called her right away. And I said, Kathy, I said, that's him. I'm sorry. I said, that's him, Kathy. That's who I saw. I said, I know it's him. And she told me another story, if we have time. She said it's the second time that she has been contacted by John. That's his name, John. And she said that when he died, it was only a few months after his death. And she dialed a phone number thinking that she was calling an insurance company. And she misdialed the phone number. She dialed a wrong area code. And man answered, and she asked him, is this so-and-so? And he goes, no, ma'am, I'm sorry, you've got the wrong phone number. She goes, oh, I'm so sorry. She goes, I'm calling she said, my husband recently passed away. And she says, I'm calling, try to get a hold of this. And she goes, no, you dialed the wrong. She goes, what number are you dialing? So she told him. And she goes, no, you dialed the wrong area code. She says, you got everything else right. You just dialed the wrong area code. And he goes, oh, where are you calling from? He goes, oh, I'm calling from Iowa. And he goes, Iowa? And she goes, yes. She says, my name is Kathy Vargason, and I'm calling on behalf of John. And he goes, wait, you're calling from Iowa? She goes, yes, I am. And he goes, let me tell you a story. Try to keep it short here. So let me tell you a story. He says, a few months back, I was in a terrible motorcycle accident. And the paramedic said when they picked me up off of the asphalt, I was dead. I was gone. And he goes, but the only thing that I can remember is somebody was yelling at me. And what he was yelling was, tell Kathy from Iowa, John is okay. And he kept repeating it. Tell Kathy from Iowa, John is okay. And he says, I don't know anybody from Iowa. I've never been to Iowa. I don't know anybody. And he kept repeating it and repeating it. And this man passed that on. She would have never known if she didn't misdial a phone number, on that particular day. So that was the physical evidence that I needed. I was convinced that there is an afterlife, and it's a wonderful place. I felt so calm and warm and accepted, except for my little experiences over there when I was scared and tired. Other than that, if that doesn't give me the physical evidence of the afterlife in my mind, I mean, nothing ever will. So I was so blessed to be able to validate and find her and pass that message along to her and to her grandmother, And I am going to go up there this summer, probably in the fall maybe, and I am going to sit on John's white porch. And with that is my story. I thank you so much for allowing me to present it. And if anybody has any questions, we'll try to answer them for you.
Yeah, is there a question?
I have a question, Randy.
Okay.
I understand that 3 NDEs, but this sounded like one continuous NDE. Can you clarify that?
At the end of each one, I did return to that blackened world. The lights went out, if you will. I went back, and then the next time I remember my spirit awakening, and I was going through that tunnel again. So my thought is that there are 3 separate occurrences. I think my spirit was preparing to go. I was so close to death, and the doctor said that, they were worried. I was sitting on that razor sharp edge for so long, so many days, that they just didn't know which way I was going to go off of that edge. So I think my spirit, my consciousness inside was trying to get there, but I was fighting so hard, it kept returning. Or, I've used this analogy before too. I was probably that uninvited dinner guest, that shows up at the door and you say, uh-oh, what are you doing here? And somebody told my spirit guide, show him around a little bit and then show him the door back, okay? Because he doesn't belong here. But to me, sir, they were 3 separate instances to me. They weren't one continuous. I had definitely gone back into my little dark, sedated world, each time.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Randy, that space, that place where you said that it was like a room or a hall, where you said that there were chandeliers and all that. What was your understanding of that space?
Well, at the time, I knew I was in some great, magnificent hall. hustling, bustling going on. I could sense that on the floor. Some have called it the Hall of Records. That maybe that's because that's, I guess, where a lot of the life reviews occur. I didn't have a life review. I probably would have loved one. Well, maybe not. But I would have liked to experience one. But I didn't have that because I don't think I was allowed to venture that far. You know, if you could almost think of heaven in tiers, I think I was on that first tier and wasn't allowed to go any deeper. But some have described that room as being the Hall of Records. That probably where I was at, because I guess, the way I described it, people have contacted me and a couple of other presentations that I've done that they have been there, and I've described it exactly as they remember seeing it as well. So that's where I must have been into that Hall of Records.
Yeah, it feels about right. That's where I was too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Randy.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone
Thank
else?
you.
Hi, Randy.
Hi.
Hi. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story with our group this evening. And, you know, a lot of the tragedies we have in life that may form our path that we go through, you know, I just want to say thank you for bringing some resolution to all those people in your career that lost loved ones. And my question is, when you were there, did you touch anything? But before you answer the question, I just want to let you know that I had a brief NDE and I was in the dark void. And I can sense spirit now, because I've, you know, opened the door and made some rules, and they come. And while you were talking about John was here. My body gets goosebumps completely. And as you were showing John's pictures and crying, so was I, because he was here. So whenever I get the goosebumps, he's here right now again, because I'm talking about him. It validates it's that someone's telling the truth and they're talking about a spirit. So I just want to say thank you. And my question really was, I had two. Did you touch anything? And do you have any idea where the stairway might have gone to?
Oh, why did I touch anything? I remember there in the Hall of Records being up on that mezzanine, and it was like a gold-plated railing of some sort that separated, you know, on the edge of the mezzanine there. And if I recall, I believe I was using, not leaning on it, but you know, I went up to it. I don't recall touching it, but I remember that railing there for sure. And of course, the steps, the staircase, I remember touching those, and as I crawled up that staircase, I don't know where it went. I mean, it went up as far as you could see. So you could say it probably went up into heaven. I don't know, but it was just as far as you could see as the staircase going up. So those are the only two things that I remember physically touching. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And say hello to John for me.
The humorous gentleman with been there, done that. I have a question. Go ahead. Oh, your microphone is off.
Yes, it is. I'm sorry. Randy,
Yes, sir.
did you have a body when could you see your body when you were there?
No.
You couldn't.
No. When I was in that void, when I saw my parents and John came up, I don't even recall having a body. It was just me, my conscious physically there. Mm-hmm. I don't recall a body at all then. In the Great Hall, I recall not all of my body. I remember hands there, but I don't recall having a whole complete body. Most of the time, I wasn't aware.
What did you see of your body? I didn't hear you.
I remember hands. I remember I had hands.
Okay. Yep.
But I don't remember having a full body. Most of the time was just my conscious
Right.
state being there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, hey Randy, thank you for
Yes, sir.
sharing.
Thank you. Thank you so
Can you hear
much.
me okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I had a different type of, call it NDE, but it happened right after I got sober, and I was doing all of my 12 steps, and it happened during a meditation, and I had this. I really listened because you mentioned you could see 360 degrees, and that's what happened to me. I had this. I would call it a like an explosion, but not an explosion. That sounds too violent. But it was more like all of a sudden we'll call it a loving explosion that occurred in my consciousness or my mind, and it was a like a white mist fog, but you could see through the fog, so more like a mist, and it was totally inviting to me, and it made me feel that this was safe. And then I had this energy that ran up through the center of my being and took away everything that was not of its nature. And so there was two questions. When you were there, could you feel, because I sure did, I felt the immense, I felt a love that was so powerful, it defies words and comprehension, and it knew no bounds, had no boundaries, it had no end to it. In fact, what I sensed from it is that it was always expanding, and then I sensed, I'm trying to remember because it happened so long ago, but uh, I remember trying to talk to this experience. Um, I knew it wasn't of the earth, and I knew it wasn't, I wasn't out of my mind. Um, it sort of seemed to communicate with me. The only way I can put it is telepathically. It it wasn't in what we would call words coming from someone's mouth, and it wasn't written on my eyelids. It was this kind of strange knowing, and I received a message from. I think there were a couple. There was something. It wasn't tangible like you could see in your experience. You could see an orb or a spirit, but I sensed that there was at least two presence of something there, and then they left. They gave me a message, like I said, that was experienced and in her, not hearing with ears. It was just weird. It's telepathic. Only way I can put it. Did you have that too as well?
Yeah, most of the communication to me was telepathically. Like my spirit guide, there was two people that physically talked to me, and that was the one in the Great Hall who told me I wasn't supposed to be there, that I had to leave, and John, when John approached and said, "Tell Madison that his grandfather is okay." Those are the two people I remember physically talking to me. The spirit guide, to follow him and to stop, and I had to go back. That was all telepathically. You almost feel it, don't you? You almost feel the words that they're speaking. It's strange because you do. And you mentioned the love. Yeah, I felt that as well. Even through that, into the walk, and you feel so accepted and so much at peace. I was never been so calm in my whole life as what I was there. And some of that came back with me. My wife said, who came back? Because you're not the same person. And it has changed my life in so many different ways. But, that love and that warmth, I felt that. And it just stays with you wherever you transitioned or walked through. And I think the meaning of me getting lost and scared, and he had to put me through that. You know, I feel like he wanted me to experience that because of my father's death and my fear of death so badly, you know, that he wanted to give me a brief feeling like that I knew that he would tell me that it's okay, that it's fine. You know, there's nothing to fear, you know, because I'm so at peace now with all of that. We would not be having this conversation about death. So trust me, you know, I wouldn't have talked about it at all. But his love certainly has come through and I certainly have brought some of that back with me, because it has, you know, I have a thirst for knowledge. When I finished my master's degree, I told my wife, I said, I'm not picking up another book as long as I live. And I hadn't. I'm a terrible reader. Not terribly that I am reading, but just, you know, I was always a very energetic, go type of guy. Just didn't have time to sit still. But now I just thirst for knowledge. I've got 3 books that I'm reading now at one time, you know, and I've read so many books this last year and a half, that I think I've outdone my wife, and she's an avid reader. And it's just amazing, the transformation that you go through. You know, you look at life a completely different way, so much more accepting. I came out of the ICU with ICU delirium and PTSD, and my therapist that I'm still seeing is helping me work through some of that, and he is, you know, through meditation. You mentioned the meditation and things, and that has helped tremendously too, of bringing a lot of resolve to my spirit. And you know, my little granddaughter that was born yesterday, you know, was trying to open her eyes, and I think I may have already told some of you, she was trying to open her eyes today, and I told my daughter, I said, look, the little spirit inside of her is awakening, and that's what she's doing. It's
Well, can I ask one more question, Randy?
Yes, sir.
Is that okay?
Yes, sir. It's okay with me. If it's okay with you.
Yeah, we have 4
She's
other
boss.
people wanting to ask
Oh,
questions.
then please,
Go
I'll
ahead.
pass. I'll
Is
pass
it a short question?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, great.
Once I have tasted and experienced that love, it makes it very difficult a lot of times, because what I have wanted is to be able to live as that love on the earth, because everything is crystal clear.
Yeah.
Yes,
for sure.
indeed.
Yeah, for sure. It sure is. It's my relationship with my wife and my kids is so much deeper now. You know, it's so much purer. And I've developed such a deeper relationship with all of them, because before I wouldn't talk about the Bible, I wouldn't talk about, you know, God or any of that, because it made me uncomfortable, and I just didn't have the knowledge. But now, I mean, I can talk to anybody now.
Thank you again, Randy.
Okay,
yes, sir.
so
Thank you so much.
David, and then Sue, and I see that there are 3 more, but I don't know who they are.
Okay.
David, go ahead.
Right. Thank you. It was a
Hi,
great.
Dave.
Thank you so much. 2 quick questions. One
Yes,
is,
yes.
when you compare, because your daughter told you it was a hallucination, it sounded like you weren't sure, but was the quality of what you were experiencing looking back, how did it compare to a dream or this reality? That's one question.
Mm-hmm.
And 2, the times you were feeling sick, tired, sort of fearful, was that right before you went back into your body? So those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, the first one, the difference between the hallucinations and the dreams, they weren't as clear. I mean, I can remember them, but they weren't as, the only way I can describe it is they weren't as clear and sharp as the NDEs were. Does that make sense? You know, I knew what was going on. I knew what was happening, but it was like a fog. You know, you're somewhere and stuff is happening, But it all involved my daughters and people that were alive to me. You know, nobody dead present themselves in any of those dreams. And the hallucinations, like I said, the dancing bears on the ceiling were definitely a hallucination. And then I had another hallucination. My respiratory therapist doctor, who put me on the ECMO machine, could not come into my room. His wife has breast cancer, and he didn't want to expose himself, so he wouldn't come into the room to take it back. I had a hallucination of him standing in a birthing pool with my 3 dogs, and my 3 dogs were swimming. And I was so mad because why did this man, who I didn't know at the time, who had my dogs and why were they swimming in this pool? And he was standing at the door looking in, because I can describe him exactly what he looks like, you know. And when I came out of that coma and stuff, and I saw him for the first time, I said, "You were standing at that door looking at me." He goes, "Yeah, I was," you know. So I can know those. Those are just, you know, but that the NDEs are so clear and so crisp and so in the moment. I knew I was somewhere, you know. Thank you, Dave.
So Sue,
Okay, answers your
Donna,
question.
and then Laurie. Go ahead, Sue.
Thank you for sharing your experience, Randy. It
Hi,
was a
Sue.
lot of
Yes, ma'am.
details. It was really cool. And here, the place you described, the chamber, which Tina mentioned, the chamber, the gold, and
Hall,
the
yeah.
bustling place. I read some books before, Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. They describe a place, kind of like the place you described. They kind of label it as a transfer station where the souls are sorting out and going to their destinations where they're supposed to be channeled to. So do you feel like it's kind of like that type of place, like a train station, where people are sorting out and trying to go directly to go where they are supposed to go?
Very well could be. I mean, maybe that's where he, you know, that's where I went. I because I wasn't allowed to see anyone, it was hard to see what they were doing. I've been asked before if, you know, I could see tables on the floor with books and records and things, and I didn't see any of that. But they had these big arched openings on the side, which certainly could be, you know, leading off to there. So what you say, Sue, is very, very well could be. I just don't have enough. I remember visually what it looked like. I just don't have any reference to the type of room it was. Only one thing I was told was that it was one of the more popular rooms.
Oh.
You know? Yeah.
And you said they said you're not supposed to be there, and then you direct to the city, right? And you go through a door to the city.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And I have a few questions that I just want to make sure I get them sorted out. Recently, like a couple weeks ago, one of my friends passed away suddenly from a heart attack. So he was in the ventilator for about 6 days, where he was described as not responding to anything. So I was wondering, because when he's in that state, I was trying to help. I was trying to see if there's anything that can bring him back. Perhaps his spirit has left at the moment of the heart attack. So even though he's physically still alive, technically alive, but he's not responsive. So I wonder, because you were in the ventilator for 3 weeks, right? That's a long time. So you had 3 NDEs, and have you ever felt in moments where you are back in your body at all? Like, did you have any moments where you were back in your body, even for a brief moment? Do you remember any like that?
That's an interesting question. Thank you. I don't remember, you know, like I consciously saying I'm back. You know, I'm back in my body. I do remember little clips, you know, moments where I can describe what one of my nurses looked like or what she was wearing. You know, looking up at them. One of my angels, I call them, one of my ICU nurses. And there's something about that ECMO machine too, is that it requires 2 nurses 24 hours a day. And I was on that for almost 14 days. And so I had 2 nurses by my bed 24 hours a day. And I had conversations with them both. And when I came around, when they finally brought me out of the coma, you know, I apologized. You know, every time I saw a nurse, I apologized. I said, look, I'm so sorry if did something inappropriate or yelled at you, or please, because I was yelling and screaming.
You were?
I was yelling and screaming inside my head, you know. I was so mad. And I was restrained, and I was those restraints so hard, I actually ruptured a tendon, and I had to get surgery on my wrist because I was pulling so hard. And every one of them looked at me and smiled, and they said, Mr. Randy, you had tubes down your throat and in a coma. You didn't say a word. You didn't move. And all of those conversations, I remember one nurse, I had a complete conversation with her. She answered me and everything. She, you know, she told me she was a PRN nurse, this is a part-time nurse, and she was from Tampa, Florida. And I asked her how long she was worked in the ICU. And I mean, I had a complete conversation with her all up here.
Oh, so it's more
But
like,
yeah. So, you know, when loved ones are in that comatose state, I mean, they can see. I mean, like my one favorite nurse always wore a black respirator, big black respirator. And she had her hair pulled up in a bun, messy bun, like my daughter Lisa does when she works. And she told me that when I came out and had all the tubes out and everything, and I was transitioning to a conscious state, that I called her Lisa several times, you know. But I can remember looking up during periods of time. I can remember looking, they put white gloves on my hands. So I couldn't try to untie them or anything, you know, before they paralyzed me. And I remember looking at those clearly. I remember looking at those. I remember looking at her. So I have those bits and pieces of recall where I was obviously back into my body, and I can remember those. I don't physically remember, if you will, leaving and coming back.
But somehow on some level, there's a connection between your soul and your body. Like the connection was never completely severed. Would you say that?
Yeah, I never died. You know, I never, quote, died. My heart didn't stop. I was close. I was very, very close, probably as close as you can be. I was going to try to show you. That's, try to get it up here. Yeah, that is, I had the white gloves on then, and they had set me up for some reason. Don't remember that at all, but they had set me up for some reason. Yeah.
Another question I have is about John. It seems like John is desperately or very intensely trying to connect with people still living. The story you shared of him, of his wife calling the insurance company, accidentally dialed the wrong number, and that person got a message when in his NDE where John gave the information. Do you think these things are pre-arranged, like it's planned out in the spirit world, where John already planned for his wife to dial the wrong number to connect to the guy?
He knew it. He knew it.
Okay.
I mean, God knows all, doesn't he? He knows. He knew that she was going to dial that wrong number. He knew somehow. He knew I had some remote connection with Madison. I mean, I didn't know who Madison was.
I am not sure. Yeah. So there's the thing is that, does he know it or he arranged it actually? Like the card magically appear in your dresser? Maybe just a physical manifestation. Maybe you never grabbed the card and just appear in your dresser. Could that be a possibility? And John,
anything's a possibility because I don't know how long that card sat in there. I don't even remember picking it up, quite honestly. So,
it's
it had to
interesting
be.
watching you two interact because both of you have scientific minds. It's interesting.
Yeah. Um, John passed away like my father did. John had a heart attack and died very quickly. And Kathy was out of the house when he died. So he never got to say goodbye. And I think that family loves and supported one another so much that this is his way of saying, "Hey, I'm okay. I'm goodbye. I'm okay." And I think that's the way he wanted to communicate and tell his family, because he does have one daughter, the daughter that found him, struggling with his death, as I did with my father. And she feels very guilty that she couldn't have done more. So I think it's his way. He went through Madison to tell them that he's safe, he's okay. It's let him go.
Yeah. Thank you very much. There's so much
Thank
to
you.
learn in your experience.
Anna,
Thank you.
can you put your thank you.
Hi, Randy. Thank you very
Hi.
much for your
Hi, Donna.
for
That's
your
my wife's name,
testimony.
Donna.
Oh, thanks.
Yes,
Not very
sweet
many
lady.
people, but thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your testimony. It's very thought provoking, and I'm always thrilled to hear everybody's stories, because some of them are very similar, and yet they're so unique to everybody. But I have two questions. The first one is, you said that you were not, because you were such a fact finding person, being a detective and forensics, just the facts ma'am type of guy. You really didn't have much time for faith and spirituality. It was like not your thing. So now that you have come out of this experience, and I know spirituality is a very personal thing to everybody, so you don't have to share details or anything, but if you can, how would you say that your spirituality has changed?
Oh my goodness. I can't say I don't have any regrets. I don't have any regrets. I'm trying to think of the right word. I only wish this happened earlier to me, because it has changed my life. I'm 69 years old, and it has just spiritually, I'm so much different. I want to read religious books. I want to find out more about Jesus's life, and I'm fascinated with things that he's said, in Psalms. They're so thought provoking now, and I talk to him every day. Some days, several times a day. I'll thank him for something, or please show me the way. So I'm much more spiritual. I was baptized Lutheran, and my kids all went to Catholic school, and they're all baptized Catholic. I converted to Catholicism, and I'm writing a book, and I go more into detail about my past religious beliefs in the book. But some things happened that just kind of threw me off of church, and of organized religion. And so I enjoy being spiritual. I believe wholeheartedly, in God and spirit, and and I don't mind talking about it whatsoever. I still have a lot to learn in that area. I know I do, but I think I can get it all in. I'm praying I am.
Thank you. And my second question is this: some people, after having an NDE, come back with special powers, as they say, such as, like Lori had said, that sometimes she can experience, spirits in the room, or some people can tell illnesses in people's bodies. Some people can sense, different things. Did you experience that coming out of your NDE?
I think I'm still becoming aware of that. I don't think I fully connected or fully identified. Let me give you an example. My daughter, when she turned Lisa again, when she turned 30, she wanted to go skydiving. So I told her that I would ride with her. I said, I ain't going skydiving, but I'll ride with you over there. And we went over, and she went through the little lesson and everything, and I'm standing there. They take her out to get her ready to tandem skydive. So I looked at the guy and I said, he said, you want to go, don't you? And I said, yeah, suit me up. So he took me out back to get me suited up. And we walked past these 3 parachutes that were sitting all packed, ready to go. And he grabbed one and I said, don't take that one. And he kind of looked at me and I said, we're going to have problems with that one. Take another one. And he goes, we'll be okay. And he grabbed that one. Guess what? We got up, we jumped out of that plane, and he started jumping up and down. And I said, are we okay? He goes, oh, we have a tangled line. I'm trying to get it untangled. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, well, and then all of a sudden he said, okay, hold on again. He goes, I have to jettison the main chute. We're going to go to the reserve chute. So he had jettisoned, we went to the reserve chute, and we landed safely and stuff. When we landed, I got up and looked at it and said, I told you not to take that one. So, I don't know if that's developing yet. I do have that bit of a, right now I'm just calling the gut feeling that in that case, or I told my daughter the other day, don't go to that place at this time, go later in the day or something. And something happened. I forget what it was. It's been several months ago. So I don't know if that's developing still. I don't know, but that's weird.
Randy, I feel that you're still processing and
Yeah.
and then you're becoming more comfortable with the idea of the information that comes through you.
Are you interested in learning more about it or developing it more?
Yeah. Thank you.
Well.
All right. Thank you very much.
Laurie?
Yes. Hi again.
Hi.
I do thank the spirits when they come to me, and they just don't come in the room, Donna. They come inside my body. My whole body will vibrate. I have felt Mother Mary. I have felt God. I have felt Jesus. I have felt Dr. Peoples. And they all have different vibrations inside my body. It depends who I'm talking to. But as soon as I mention spirit or someone mentions spirit and it's the truth, my whole body vibrates. And Randy, I opened this door with assistance from Tina. So you may want to reach out to her. There's, like she tells me all the time, all you have to do is ask. And not listening to spirit. One day I kept hearing, I knew my car had a battery issue, but I kept hearing, go to emissions first. So I got in the line for emissions, but it was really hot and it was really long. And I said, you know what? I know I need a battery, so I'm going to go do that. Well, I went to, and I kept hearing as I'm driving to go get the battery, go to emissions first. And I'm thinking, am I getting this message? Well, they replaced the battery and that reset my whole system. So they could not do the emissions after that.
Wow.
So,
wow.
you get strange things. I just kept hearing go to emissions, but I had 2 more questions. One, could you describe what the city looked like? Did it look old? Did it look new? Did it look modern? Did it have castles? What's in the feel of the city?
Oh,
and
I'm sorry.
Was you mentioned that you may have had what you're trying to process through as another experience. I also had fear in my NDE you know, I felt fear when I was there because I didn't know where I was. And I also have PTSD from the way my NDE occurred. So processing through it has taken quite a long time. So, you know, just keep going in the direction you're going, and you'll get there and pull the pieces together. So yeah.
I've got a wonderful therapist in that area because, you know, I had PTSD as well in that. And fortunately, he believes in all of this, and he's being able to really help me focus and bring some of that out. But I felt that the city I was in felt very modern to me. It didn't seem like ancient, you know. I didn't see a wall, you know. Some people described, and the Bible describes this wall around, and I didn't see any of that. I didn't experience, you know, being greeted at the gates or anything. Although maybe that's who greeted me and sent me out the door, maybe. But you know, I felt it was a very modern type of a city that I was in, not ancient at all. And if I may, Tina, real quick, can I tell you that third one? And we have all kind of minds here. Maybe they can help me sort it out. I'll try to be very quick with it. But I remember waking up and I was on a path, a dirt road type of a path, and it was lined with beautiful trees and flowers and everything. And a little boy came out. He ran out to me. Didn't know him. It was just a little boy. And he just said, "Follow me, follow me." So I followed him, and we went into this building, very beautiful building. I don't recall the outside very much, but the inside of it was, he took me like into a waiting room, and it was very beautiful. They had several pedestal type benches, all in red velvet or all in red leather. And so I sat down, and on the side there, it had a big picture window. And I walked up to the picture window, and there was a river that ran underneath the building. And on both sides of it, it's all kind of lush vegetation and beautiful trees. And this river just meandered off into the distance. And I remember 4 or 5 people actually in the water, in human form. A man and a woman were swimming in one area, and another man and a woman were swimming in another area. And I was waiting and waiting. It seemed like a long time. And this little boy came back, the same little boy that greeted me. He came back, and he said to me, "Your room isn't ready yet. You have to leave." And I went blank. I went dark. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that classifies as another one, or I'm not sure. I don't know.
Just be patient, Randy. Jack, did you have a question? Jack, your sound is off.
Sorry. Yes, Randy. Had a very complex, powerful experience. After you returned, did you feel that you were chosen?
Some people say that they think I have been chosen. I questioned for the longest time, and still do to some extent, why me? Why was I chosen? Because I don't deserve it. I didn't deserve the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that were praying for me. One of my daughters were in charge of prayers, and she showed me a map. She created a little map for me of all the people in all the different states that were praying for me, church groups, people that didn't know me, and I certainly didn't know them, Scotland, England, Australia, Canada, all these prayer groups that were praying for me at the time. And I still deal with that of why me? Why was I picked? Why was I chosen? I didn't do anything in my life to deserve this peace, this honor, this, you know, I don't know. You know, I certainly don't think I deserved it. I shouldn't be here. I mean, COVID gave me every reason in the world to die. And I should not be here. And I keep struggling with that. Why me? You know? But, and I said this before, and I want to share it here, is COVID is a very horrible, horrible disease. I understand that. We've lost millions of people because of it. And I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, because I understand that. I mean, I suffered from it. But in so many different ways, COVID was a blessing to me. You know, it saved my life in so many different ways. And I'm still working on that. I'm still trying to figure that one out, Jack. Is, you know, I feel like I'm so undeserving of such
All right, you're
an honor.
humble. You said something that really resonated for me about your daughter setting up a meditation and a prayer group. And I wondered if you'd be kind enough to tell her that I would be interested in knowing what she did and how she did it.
Okay.
And I don't know how to pass this on, except she could contact me by email. And
Okay.
Randy,
Tina, do you have his email?
Randy, I will send you Jack's email, okay?
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. She's got, for my book, I've asked each one of my daughters to write, and my wife to write their thoughts and their feelings of what they did. I have an amazing family. I've been blessed in so many different ways. I have an amazing family. And one daughter, like I said, is a nurse. She took on all the medical responsibilities, you know, because she knows the jargon. My middle daughter did a lot with the blood bank of getting me that convalescent plasma. And she did a lot with social media. And then my oldest daughter is the one that was in charge of prayers. You know, she formed those prayer groups and meditation groups and things that way. And my wife, God bless her, she maintained that household, you know, and kept them all together. There were fights, there were disagreements, there were, you know, there was. It would be normal under those conditions. And but you know, they're miraculous. So yes, Jack, I will get that information for you, and we'll get it to you.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
You're a very lucky man. You had a fantastic support system and with your family, and that's a major support. Yes, thank you.
Yes,
Sue,
sir. Thank you
did you
so
have a
much.
question? Sue?
Yes.
Hi,
I
Sue.
want. Hi. Such a blessing to hear your story. And
Thank
I
you.
want to ask about the different levels of consciousness. I feel your NDE, where you were in the chamber and the street, is that the deepest level you feel during this different levels of experiences you had? You also said you had imaginary conversations with the nurses. So do you feel like those are also realities on a different level, like deeper than the physical, but maybe shallower than the NDE?
When I was up in the afterlife, I did feel there was different levels, and that's why I couldn't. I feel that's why I couldn't see or communicate with people. I was kind of on that first tier, you know, and that's where they kept me. From all the books that I've read and some people that I've talked to and things, you know, near-death experiences, experiencing death or being so close to death that you experience. And I was in that second, I was in the latter. I was just so close to death. So my heart didn't stop. And I'm wondering if that had some bearing on how far I was able to transition, you know. They knew my heart wasn't going to stop. They knew, I mean, John certainly knew I was going to survive because he sent me back with that message, you know. And I think I was some reason I felt that I got into that void a little bit deeper than I was previously. So your previous question of being a transition center makes sense to me now. because maybe that is a first tier, first level type of an area, you know, and but that void seemed to be a little bit deeper than where I was before. As far as the level of consciousness goes, that's a tough one. I'm wondering if it isn't a survival mechanism. You know, I was facing so much medically, physically, emotionally, that it wasn't my spirit trying to maybe put me at ease to having these conversations. Does that make sense? You know, that they allowed me or made me think that I was communicating and talking to these other people, these nurses, because they looked at me like I'm crazy. The one nurse that I thought I had that conversation with, she said, well, I'm not a part-time nurse, I'm a full-time nurse, and I'm not from Tampa. And, you know, so everything that it was wrong. I mean, it all went up in my head. So I think that's possibly a survival technique of our mind that allows us to, you know, to make you feel that you're still connected to reality.
So it's so you mean it's closer to the physical, more closer?
I'm sorry, what was the first part?
Do you feel like that more kind of like a hallucination, right?
Those, yeah, those were, yeah. That when I had those conversations in my head, a lot of them went on. I remember not seeing. I remember laying there with my eyes closed, so I couldn't see anything, or I think my eyes was closed, but it was all voices that I heard, you know, and talked.
Yeah.
That was another thing that would surprise me, because I said, wow, you can hear people when you're dead. That's kind of cool. You know?
Yeah.
And I just have one more question is when you are in the garden, maybe not exactly a garden, you see the river, you see people in the river, and a little boy tell you your room is now ready. So in that mental space, like I can guide people in meditation, get into a place kind of like that, but I'm not sure how it relates to like the more deeper levels of consciousness, like the near-death experience. I'm just wondering what is a meditation can take you to the deepest, what is the deepest level you can do with meditation? Like I certainly feel if people can through meditation have a profound transformation like you had in the near-death experience, people's life will be changed, right? And they don't need to go through a near-death experience. Like if we can achieve that transformation through meditation, like in one meditation, then a lot of people's life can be changed. But I found with people is I guide people through that garden, they feel that peace when they come back. It's not long sustaining. It's not like through one meditation, their life is, wow, changed totally. And you have to do it like consistently, but many people, they don't have that, habit or the ritual of going through that. Anthony.
There he is. Hey, buddy.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering what meditation can take you to, like to have a life-changing transformation through one session, like an NDE experience.
Down.
Yeah, well, it's acceptance, isn't it? I think when you go through that, you have to kind of accept where you've been to change your life, and you have to assign meaning to it, don't you? When you're that deep into meditation, I'm learning that. My therapist hasn't taken me that deep into a meditation. I want to go there. I want to experience that, and he's slowly getting. And we've talked about that a lot of taking people into these areas, and he's gone very deep. He actually was over in Tibet for a while and studied. It got me reading the Tibetan book of death and dying, you know, which is a fascinating read. And you know, he's explained it, that it's a lot of, you know, he feels with you can change lives through meditations, but you got to accept that. You have to accept where you're at and accept what that experience is, and acknowledge and understand how it can better your life. You know, if we just ignore it, you know, then it goes to the wayside, you know.
There's one form of meditation.
Very powerful.
Yeah, there's one form of hypnosis slash meditation that I know of that can take people to the spirit world. Can have really powerful experience, but it is also multi sessions. Kind of that's the thing that most resemble a near death experience through meditation that I know of. So really powerful stuff. Thank you for your clarity. And
oh, thank you.
Okay, Lori
How'd
has
that
another
little
question,
boy
right?
for me?
Lori,
I do have a couple of quick questions. First thing is, the little boy is real. That was an NDE. He came here. What did he look like? Can you describe him?
Oh gosh. Well, I'd have to concentrate on that one. I have not. He was a little boy, dark hair,
He had
dark
a
skin.
sharp haircut.
Yes.
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 Yeah. Did he have any
yes.
freckles? Did he have any freckles?
I don't recall. He had.
But a sharp, very sharp bang haircut.
Haircut. Yes.
Okay.
That for
You're
sure.
helping me. You're helping me because I haven't been able to visualize. So yes.
Yeah. He had dark skin.
He was telling you it
skin.
wasn't your time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Little boy, he had little shorts on. He had shorts, barefoot. I want to say maybe a button-down shirt. I remember like a little collared shirt on, you know, and he came out really full energy. He was all full of energy. Follow me, you know, all excited. Yeah.
And I was just wondering, your guide, do you have any idea if you knew this person here, knew this person on the other side, or have no idea who it was? And I also just want to wish you.
I have no clue.
Okay.
Yeah. I wish I did. I talked to him. I asked him questions, especially when I get into that writer block, you know. I said, you know, please just give me the words to help me through, you know?
I wish you continued health. I wish you success with your book, and I hope you enjoy that brand new, beautiful soul you have to give.
No, thank you. Yeah, I want to talk to her. They haven't come home yet, but I want to talk to her. You know, I got questions for her.
Donna,
I want to know her plan. You know,
Donna, do you still have your question? Donna? Donna had a question that she wrote down. Donna? Okay, she wanted to know if you knew about NDEs prior to your having one.
A little. I remember in my forensic medicine class, the doctor, when we were in Death and Dying, discussing near-death experiences. And I remember, you know, you see a movie, you know, there's a lot of movies that have come out, and I've seen a couple of movies where they were presented and things, but it wasn't an area that really interests me, or, you know, I always thought, well, God, that'd be kind of cool to have one of those, you know, maybe, you know, but it wasn't something that I studied or really knew a lot about before. No.
Very good. So Greg, can you put your sound on? You have a question? Okay.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, how you doing? Yeah, you know, I was thinking about your work as a forensic detective, dealing with some of the most horrid acts of humankind, and I don't know if this is something you could answer, but when you reflect back on that now with your experience, does that seem do you have a different outlook on that?
Somebody was guiding me. Somebody was guiding me because I won't say several, I had quite a few death investigations where either the coroner was going to indicate that an individual died differently from what I thought how he died. And it took some work and some study and some experimentation to show the coroner what I believed. And through the evidence, he changed his opinion and changed the death certificate. There was another case on a little boy who was beat very bad, a little 2-year-old boy. And I didn't normally get involved. I mean, I did child abuse, but normally it was when it led to a death. But in this case, they asked me to have a look at it and see what I thought, because the boy had a pattern injury on his back right around his kidneys. And I couldn't figure out what made that mark, what that pattern injury was. And as sure as I'm sitting here today talking to you all, it suddenly came to me. It dawned on me. It was a knuckle impression. Somebody hit this little boy in the back so hard to leave a knuckle impression. And how do you prove that? How do you show that? You know, we have so many individual characteristics. You know, physically, our fingerprints are individual, and so many other things, our blood, and so many other things that you can separate people from. But the question is on, you know, and I was able to develop a technique, and I was able to identify the suspect, and I was able to do the you know, it all comes down to probability. What's the probability of people having the same size fist? And I was able to do those studies and publish, and we found the suspect, and the judge convicted her based on that evidence. And you know, we were able to bring resolution to the family of what happened to their, you know, their little boy. He had a perforated bowel because he got kicked in the stomach, and at the same time he was hit in the back, and he had a perforated bowel. And I remember telling the surgeon that I wanted the section of bowel that he was going to remove. I wanted that as evidence, and he looked at me like I was, you know, from outer space. Why would I want that? But we were able to take that and get it time dated of when the injury occurred. And we were able to get the bruising and go by the color of the bruising and get the time date on that bruising. And all of those windows of when it's all occurred just played right into, you know, everything else so neatly and so nicely that we were able to do, you know, a new technique that eventually, you know, was able to get the little boy's culprit found and identified and prosecuted. And, you know, that's always been rewarding to me that way. But, you know, so there's a couple of things that have happened now that I look back. And I'm so glad you asked that question, because it's going to make me look back even deeper. But there's been so many things that, not so many, but a few things that have just questioned me at first that eventually I came up with, you know, I got those answers, you know, I got what I needed. And maybe that was my spirit guide helping me along with all of that, you know?
So,
Never
but
alone.
I'm sorry. So you're still working as an investigator?
No, sir. I have fully retired.
Okay.
I get my friends back up in Ohio, where I was a consultant. I traveled all across the United States for a while, training from FBI, Secret Service, CIA, all the crime scene guys on use of different materials and use of different equipment and techniques and stuff. So occasionally, you know, they'll call me up, but, you know, I don't do anything real serious anymore. They're getting far and far few between. They know I'm out of business.
Very good. Thank you. Any
Randy,
other questions?
yeah, Brandy, I have another question. This is Donna Gordon.
Yes, ma'am. Hi, Don.
Hi. You know, the thought just came to me. It's really not a question. It's more of a statement. And it's that you said before, and it kind of just hit me with a kind of like a revelation, that you said before that why me? Why me and not somebody else? You know, I'm not special, etc. But
Right.
if you think back to all of the work that you did, you just described a couple of very important cases you had, you know, dealing with a child who had been killed, and your whole career has been with people who have been killed, unjustly killed. And you were there to give them justice. They couldn't speak for themselves anymore, and you were the one who found justice for them. And being someone who has had their whole life working for God, I feel that I think heaven takes special notice of people who have done justice for those who are no longer with us and who can't speak for themselves.
Well,
So I just wanted to lay that out there for you.
Yeah, no, I God bless you for you doing God's work for so long, because, you know, I miss that. You know, I miss that in my life, and I think I was a pretty tense, stressful. You know, I guess if you wanted to classify it as an alpha male, you know, I didn't let everything stand in my way. You know, I resolved problems and I resolved issues, and yeah, thank you. I mean, like I said before, it's changed me. I'm just, my wife says,
but
who
I know
are you? Who are you?
Right. We think of police work as being very mundane, very, you know, just the fact, like I said, just the facts, ma'am, that kind of thing. But if you look at it from a different perspective, and especially if you're a detective and a forensic detective, really trying to get to the bottom of someone's death. And some of these cases, as you probably know, are just, how are you ever going to solve this case? You know, that kind of thing. You can think of it also as you're doing God's work. So there's a lot of different ways of doing God's work, and we all have a way to do God's work. And I'm not talking just in a religious aspect. I'm also talking in a spiritual aspect. Whatever your spirituality and faith or no faith is, you know, you're doing the work of the universe. So I thank you on behalf of those who can't speak for themselves, but I'm sure that this was one of the ways that the great divine presence was able to thank you. So thank you again.
Thank you for saying. Thank you so much.
Donna, thank you for channeling that.
Yes.
I got to tell you, Tina, this one came out of nowhere,
Yes,
and
that's right. You were channeling.
It'll probably be another 5 years before that happens again. So
yes. So Randy, I'm going to be in touch with you. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And also, I need to find out more information, because we're going to put the video on our website. But also, I want to ask you more questions as far as how do people, if you wanted to be contacted.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You can contact
So I'll
me
be in
anytime. Yeah, I'll give you that information.
And I will send you also, I'll get you and Jack connected to each other. All right.
Perfect. Yeah,
Thank
I look
you.
forward to it.
So
Thank you very much.
grateful.
It's been an honor talking to you all. And again, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
I'm so blessed to have met all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. You take care now. Good night.
Bye now. Y'all, good night. Good night now.
Night.
Mhm.
All right.